admin and finance for the CCTSI, which is a large, as you guys are probably learning, a large institution on campus. Our funding from NIH is around $8 million, and we get another $4 million from our various institutional partners. We have activities that we fund at Denver Health, at National Jewish, at CSU, up in Boulder, at Kaiser Permanente, and we interact with all of the schools on campus. I think we have over 5,000 members of the CCTSI, so it's a big operation. And so my office is kind of responsible for overseeing the mostly the finances. We have a director of operations that we named about 5 years ago, which really took a big load off of my office, which was great. And so the shadow that you see there is Mujib Zaidi, and he is the manager for accounting and finance for the CCTSI. And he really does the bulk of the day-to-day heavy lifting related to tracking finances and making reports. He also does all of our HR related stuff. So Galit and Mujib are in pretty constant communication about issues around your grant. And so as Lisa mentioned, every year we have some folks that don't really spend the money that's been given to them. And so I hope I don't come across a little bit harsh, but I really want to drive the point home to you guys today that my experience is that most of you will pay attention to this and will do a good job of trying to spend down your money. Some of you won't pay attention to this and you'll wind up squandering what has been a great gift to support your education and training. And so last year, for example, we had one person that only spent the money to support their stipend. Not a single dollar of their tuition, travel, which travel was restricted, or research was spent. And to me, that's really disappointing because you guys have taken the time to write an application, interview, get funded for this, go to all of the monthly meetings, do your research, and that's a lot of work. And then not to take advantage of spending the money, I think is a shame. Plus, this is really career development for you, in my opinion. You guys are training to become scientists, probably will have your own lab at some point. You will spend your career writing applications for grant funding. And you don't get a formal education on how to manage a grant really in any of your training. Probably this program, I give probably 5 or 6 lectures a year to various K-Scholar groups on campus. And we talk specifically in more detail about some of the things that we're going to talk about today. And so I really want to drive home that you guys have to be assertive in this process. Connect yourselves with the appropriate people in your departments, divisions, sections that will help you to understand your grant budget and how much money is left, how to spend the money that you have. And my office doesn't do that for you. We on a grander scale, we're looking at the broader picture of how much money is in the grant. We're looking specifically to see if there are expenses that show up that we know are not allowable, that we would then work with you to move off of your grant award onto some other funding source. And then at the end of the year, we work with each of your speed types to close those out with the Grants and Contracts Office and make our reporting to NIH. So it really is incumbent upon you all to find the right people in your own units that can help you, because you're going to need to have some access to some financial reports. You obviously don't have the ability to run those yourselves. It's not something that Mujib typically runs on a regular basis for all 11 trainees. We'll do it on, if somebody has a special request, but our preference is that you seek out the appropriate support in your own units. So what we have done this year is, and I'm going to share my screen, so most of you guys will disappear. What we have done this year is to draft a kind of an FAQ or some instructions that you can share with the folks that are going to be supporting you. Let me grab the right document and drag it over there. So this will highlight some of the major issues, and this is, this is pretty short. One thing that you need to know is that the grant that funds your training appointment actually starts in May and ends in April, while your TL1 appointment starts in July and ends in June. So it's on the academic year, and we're off by 2 months. And so that poses some real problems because there's some specific rules that we have to follow in order to spend the money. So there's a 2-month overlap between April and June, so basically May and June, right? Where the grant that has funded your appointment is over, but your training appointment continues for 2 more months. So we are allowed to carry forward the money for 2 months of stipend support for May and June. The rules also allow for tuition dollars to be spent in May and June. So if you have a summer course that you're going to be taking, as long as you get the tuition posted and it's in May or June, you can go ahead and spend those dollars. The things that you can't spend in May and June is any travel money or any research supplies money. Those are, for some reason, unallowable, and NIH is very strict on allowing us to carry those dollars forward to allow you to spend. So the travel is usually not a problem, although you guys may run into it like this year, in your particular cohort, like your prior cohort did because of COVID. Travel is restricted through 2020 for sure. And depending upon the COVID situation nationally, the national conferences may not even be happening in April, which is typically when the ACTS conference, national conference is. And that's typically how you guys spend your travel money, by supporting your airfare, lodging, and per diem type expenses. So we'll just have to keep on top of that. In a minute here, I'll show you how you can spend those travel dollars in other ways if it looks like the national conventions are going to be doing the virtual type thing. So just make a note of that's something that we'll have to kind of watch. So the important takeaway there is that we'll be able to allow you to have your stipend for May and June, and any tuition dollars that you can spend in the summer in May and June will be allowable. But we got to make sure that the travel budget and the supplies budget is spent out by the time that you get to the end of April. And so just quickly, this document, you guys have probably been reading it. One of the things that we have historically run up against is we've taken care of that for most all of you this year. So this is just kind of an FYI. There's a specific job code in the HR system that you need to be hired into in order for it to be allowable for the grant, because the TL1, the Nrsa TL1 program does not pay fringe benefits. It only pays the stipend dollars. And so many of you have previously had like research assistants or some kind of student type position, and those automatically carry a very small percentage of fringe benefits that gets charged along with the salary payments that you were receiving. And so this job code 3204 is the proper job code for you all to be in. And I had Mujib a couple weeks ago run a report for all of you to find out what job codes you were in. And I believe there was 3 of you that we had identified that were not in the proper job code. And we've communicated with your payroll folks, and I think that those things are corrected. So that is something that we can watch out for. I was wanting you guys to have this document just so that as you start talking to folks that are supporting you in your units, if some of these things come up, you've got a document that you can kind of show them. So let me see what I wrote for number 1. Yeah, so you've got a individual speed type for each of your awards for the period of July through April. Mujib and I will get new speed types for you all that will be valid for May and June, and we'll get those out to you very late in April or early in May. And you'll have to work with your payroll folks so that your 2 months of stipend gets charged to that new speed type. And if there's any tuition dollars that you'll be spending in May and June, it needs to be on that new speed type. Because you're not allowed to post any expenses to the current speed type that you have past April 30th. So that's the purpose of number one. We talked about number two. The important thing for number three, when you guys start planning to spend your tuition dollars, you're going to need to be working with somebody in your unit that helps you support that, so that you can get the tuition charged to your award, your training speed type. I would like you to specifically have them pay attention to item number three. The tuition should be charged to this account code 770200. And the reason is that account code is set up in the finance system so that there's no overhead charges applied to it. And that's the way that's the proper way to do it. When we create the overall budget for this grant, the tuition and fees category is exempt from the university's overhead. So if it gets, some departments charge it to this 422430, which is part of the fringe benefit categories of expense code. And when it hits in that code, it automatically charges overhead to your grant. And so then we have to work with folks to get that expense moved from one category to the next. So we'd like to try to start heading off some of these mistakes very, very early in the process. So number three is an item that you should pay attention to, showing the folks that support you when you're trying to spend your tuition dollars. And then I already talked about number four, which is this overlap and what that stipend and travel will carry to the following months of May and June. So here's the other document I wanted to share with you. Can you guys see the spreadsheet now? Okay. So you guys already know this. So those of you that are pre-docs on this training award, this is what your budget is. So the stipend amount is determined by NIH. It's not anything that we have any control over whatsoever. And I'll just show you really quick. If I just Google up Nrsa fiscal year 2020 stipends, and this document comes up, and it lays out exactly what we're allowed to pay. So for pre-docs, you get $25,320. It's $2,110 a month. So we've instructed all of your payroll administrators to put that dollar amount into the payroll system for your monthly stipends. And Mujib will run a report here next month to make sure that what got charged for July is the proper amount. If it's not the proper amount, we'll have to work with you and your payroll person to make sure that they get that corrected, because there's no flexibility there whatsoever. For those of you that are postdocs, and we should have 3 of you, what you get paid is determined by what they call these postgraduate years of 0 through 7 or more. And 0 is essentially the first year after you graduate. And so depending upon where you're at in your career, that's how we determined what your stipend is, and it translates to the monthly amount. And your budgets for your speed types should be set up appropriately so that the right amount of funds are in there for the stipend category. So that addresses that. For the pre-docs, there's a very large tuition and fees category. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of flexibility in how you spend this. This is the rubric right here for how you're allowed to move funds between your budget categories without having to get specific request from or approval from NIH. And so you can see that you can move money between stipends and tuition and fees, but there's really no reason to do that because we are paying you what NIH tells us to pay you. So there shouldn't be any need to move money out of or into the stipend category. But the only way that you can do that is by moving it from the tuition and fees category. So what you're left with is this $11,820 is available for you to spend on tuition and fees and health and your student health insurance. Depending on how many courses that you're taking, you may not be able to spend all of that money even to the best of your ability. So that would be something that you want to just try to pay attention to. These two categories of travel, and it's called TRE, training related expenses, basically supplies, reagents, things like that. You can treat these dollars as one pot of money if you want, especially this year if it looks like the travel opportunities are not going to be available to you because of COVID-19. And so you can move these back and forth at will. So here's what I would suggest that you do with these dollars. You all have mentors and you're all working in somebody's laboratory, and that more than likely they're supporting the costs related to the projects that you are funded for on this TL1. Get with your mentor, get with the person that manages the purchasing in your laboratory, and work out a plan to spend this money. You don't want to be coming into April and say, oh, hey, I got $4,200 of supplies that I could have spent this year. Do it now and talk to people and make a plan on how you're going to spend this money. It's free money. Your mentors would love to have this money in their laboratory. If you have specific items that you know you're going to need to support your project that might be a little bit out of the norm or whatever for regular purchasing for your laboratory, then you would want to make sure that you've got a plan with your mentor and the lab manager so that you preserve enough of this budget to purchase the supplies or research expenses that are specific to your project. But otherwise, if what you consume is general laboratory supplies from your mentor's lab, make sure that he or she knows you've got these monies and that you want them spent. So that's just free money right on the table. We'll see how things evolve related to travel. If it's looking like those meetings are going to be canceled, and we'll know that in January, February, more than likely, then you can regroup with your lab manager and mentor and say, hey, I've got a couple $1,000 more, $1,200 more that I can use to support the lab. I'll make a comment here in a minute on purchases of computers. So the postdoc situation is basically the same. My comment here is dependent upon that table that I showed you, but your speed type budget should be set up appropriately. I know that for those of you that are at CSU, my contact up there is Amy Oak. She's got a ton more experience than I do managing training grants. As a matter of fact, if I ever have a question that I don't know, I ask her. So she's a fantastic resource for you guys on the CSU campus. Your budgets are set up appropriately. Your account should have the right amount of stipend support in there, and it should be being coordinated appropriately. Postdocs don't get as much tuition and fees as the pre-docs, so you only have $4,500. So depending upon your situation up there, again, you may or may not be able to spend all of that money, even as hard as you try. And then the travel, but you get a lot more research related expenses. So again, it's important. That's a lot of money right there, but it's free money to support your program. So have a plan. Work with the folks that are supporting you in this and spend those monies down. We talked about the overlap, 2 months overlap, and that the fact that we'll get you the proper speed types for May and June. At CSU, Amy will work to get your account set up so that your stipends for May and June and any tuition dollars you have left will be available for you to spend. So there are allowable and unallowable expenses on any kind of NIH research grant. And so the important thing that you should understand is that the money that you spend should be directly related to your funded project. So, the general laboratory supplies for the lab that you work in, that's just fine. Any specific expenses that are, related to your project are fine. But, buying expenses for items that are not used on your project is not allowable. So, ultimately, you're kind of like a junior PI right now, because this is your award. One of the things that I tell the folks that actually have their own grants, where they're the PI on their own grant, is that the important thing to note is that the buck stops with you as a PI. Regardless of what happens, what expenses get charged to your grant, how they're spent, even if you didn't know about it, the eyes of NIH under an audit says the buck stops with you. You're the PI. You're responsible for managing this budget and how they're spent. It's your responsibility to understand how these dollars are being spent. So the point is that when you work out a plan with your lab on how to spend this, make sure you understand what they're spending it on. It should be general kind of laboratory supplies or things that are specifically needed for your project. If and the likelihood is low, but if this project were to get audited, then that's what an auditor does. They come in and they start looking at expenses. They pull random expenses, but they also pull expenses that look weird. Well, why is this expense on the? That's the second road. There is you should not have any food related expenses charged to your grant. No entertainment type stuff should be charged to your award, unless it is specific to your project. Like maybe you're doing a project where you're getting groups of people together for some several hour long sessions, and you want to be able to provide some refreshments and some little bit of food. That would be allowable. You would want to make sure that you justify that and you got permission from Lisa and from my office. But the likelihood that you have something like that is probably pretty rare. So you shouldn't be supporting any kind of entertainment or food type expenses with your award. General office related furniture and equipment is covered by the university's overhead. So you shouldn't be buying a desk for yourself. You shouldn't be buying office chairs for yourself. If there's specific laboratory furniture that is required to perform your project, you need a special table for a microscope. There's a special chair that you needed, but it's laboratory equipment, or it's a laboratory item. Those kinds of things are allowable, but in general you shouldn't be spending money on the regular everyday things required to support your presence and work on the university. The last thing here is computers. In recent years, the NIH, the federal auditors, the rules have relaxed a little bit around computers. My advice to you, if you need to purchase a laptop that's not specific to operating a dedicated instrument in the laboratory that's required for your project, is to come up with a small portion of funds from your mentor's account or some other funds that you have, because it shows an auditor that you're acknowledging that this laptop's not 100% absolutely utilized for this training award. You're going to be doing your regular browsing on the internet. You're going to be probably writing some papers or something for unrelated project to this TL1. You might be writing some grant-related applications unrelated to this. You certainly are going to be emailing, and not 100% of your email is related to this project. So coming up with 10 or 20% of the price of a computer and putting that on funds that are not this project funds shows an auditor that you're kind of acknowledging the fact that, yeah, I'm saying that I'm going to share this cost of the computer a little bit to acknowledge the fact that it's not 100% dedicated to this. So if you're looking to purchase a computer, then I would suggest that you figure out how you're going to pay for it, and then run that by Galit and Mujib quickly. They usually ask me. Just want to make sure everything looks like it's on the up and up, and then more than likely we'll approve that. There's a grant management concept called reasonableness, and that basically says what you purchase needs to be reasonable in the eyes of the regular, everyday, prudent person. So if you need a laptop, you buy the Ford, don't buy the Ferrari. If you need to buy the Ferrari, you better have a justification for why you need an extremely high-powered or computing device to get your project done, not just to complete your everyday kind of activities. So that's all I want to say about that. Let me stop
Can I interrupt
this.
just for a second?
Yes, please.
Lauren had a question just in terms of, could they actually pay for biostatistician time effort?
Yes.
With research.
Yeah, and that's it. That would be an hourly charge, and you would just give them your speed type, and they would charge that. They would charge that off to your grant. Let me see if are there any other questions in there, Lisa, that we need to?
There was a question actually in terms of, can we use travel to attend conferences other than the CTSA one?
Galit, this came up in a question recently, correct?
I just suspect that if someone is planning to attend 2 conferences, it's not enough money to cover both anyway, so it's not going to be applicable.
Yeah, and I think that, yeah, you don't, I mean, if something else comes up, so I think, Lisa, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the preference is for this program that you all attend the ACTS meeting.
Yes.
Because that's where all of your like colleagues from the other CTSA hubs around the country are going. If it's looking like those are going to be canceled and some other opportunity for a conference or a seminar or something comes up, you can spend your travel money on it. The thing that I was recalling, and I just remembered, it's you can't spend your tuition dollars attending seminars. They have to be tuition. It has to be like running through the university or an affiliated institution where you're paying an accredited institution for a course that's part of your training experience. That's what I was thinking. So that you need to be careful about that.
Andrea,
was anything?
Yeah, Andrea has a question. Can they use training related funds toward publication costs?
You can. You can, and actually, this might be too much information for you, but that's one of the weird expenses that you are allowed to charge to a grant after the budget period has ended, but before it's been formally closed out by NIH. So if I've got a grant that ends April 30th of 2021, and I have publication costs that I've finally incurred in October of 2021, and the grant has not been officially closed out with NIH yet by the OGC, then I could charge those costs to the grant, and that would be allowable. So that's a really weird rule, because publications lag the science, and so that's their acknowledgement of trying to fix that particular point. So there's a few other things that I wanted to say.
Okay, I do have more questions when you're done.
Okay, good. So I want you all to, this is my plea, that you're as responsive as possible to Galit and Amanda when they're asking information of you. They have lots of things that they administer related to your awards, but they also coordinate all of the CCTSI education programs. So they're not just attentive only to you. And so one of the things is these X-Train appointments. So it's important that your ERA Commons account be kept up to date with all of your credentials, any training experiences that they ask for, things like that. Because there are systems that we work within that automatically pull information from your ERA Commons profiles. So if anything changes, the department that you work in, some kind of credential, please update your ERA Commons profile. And if there are any messages from the ERA system related to X-Train and your appointment that you need to respond to, please pay attention to those, because they go through several different steps of approval, and I think one of them involves you all. And then we have a required progress report that's always due March 1st, and we are required to provide a report from each of you. There's an obligation for you to write some text about your project, and then there's a mentor piece that's involved there. Galit will probably be reaching out to you sometime in November or December to organize those with you, so please pay attention to that. You've probably seen this already, but we want you to cite the CTSA grant on any publications that result from this funded work. That could be a publication in 3 years. But if you're working on a publication where some of this funded work has been, is included in that, then tell the corresponding author that you need to cite the TL1 grant, and we can always provide that information for you. I think that you probably have it on some of the paperwork that you've already gotten from Galit and Amanda. And then you will be hounded by Galit and Amanda for years to come. And we have an evaluation team that's out of the downtown campus that will be asking information of you guys, I believe. That's part of the kind of the longitudinal evaluation of our program and the training experience that you've had here, whether you've gotten follow-on grants or support that's related to some of this funded work. So that's all I was going to say, and I will answer questions.
Okay, Lauren actually had another question. So for tuition expenses, are we only allowed to use this for institutional courses, or can we apply this money to outside courses and or workshops?
I don't believe workshops. And if it was an outside course to an accredited institution where the invoice basically says tuition, we probably could get that, get that approved. If that comes up, then reach out to us so that we can ask our grant specialist person in the Office of Grants and Contracts if something like that would be allowable.
And Mac has a question about, is it okay to use funds to purchase a microscope needed for his research?
Yeah, you probably can't buy a good microscope for $4,500 if you're a pre-doc, but if you're a postdoc, you might get something decent for $11,000. But yeah, you can use these funds to purchase instrumentation that's required for your research. If that becomes something that you're moving forward with, Mac, are you on our campus or are you up at CSU? CSU, okay. So yeah, you would need to work through Amy Oak up there to make sure that their institutional policies allow that, because depending upon how much the instrument costs, it could be classified as an asset if it's greater than equipment actually, a capital asset if it's greater than $5,000, and they may have different ways that they want to handle that. So just before you get committing yourself to something like that, make sure that you're working with Amy.
Any other questions for Tim, guys?
Great.
Tim, I have a quick thing. Can you give them 3 tidbits, lessons learned for how to succeed in managing a grant from all of your years of experience of our bad behavior?
Yeah, I think I said them. Find out the right people that can support you. Who's responsible for managing your payroll, appointments and things like that? Who in your department, division, section, unit, whatever, is responsible for assisting with purchases? And then try to know how much those things are costing, and get somebody to help you with providing some financial reports so that you can track those expenses against your budget. For you all, you don't need to worry about your salary expense. When you become a PI of your own grant, you will need to set up mechanisms to manage salary expense that's being charged to your grant, especially if you have technicians and stuff that you're supporting, because you typically write a budget for a grant, and then 12 or 18 months later, you get funded for that. Almost always that budget is cut. Clearly, the salary dollars that you put into your budget 18 months ago are probably different than they are now. So you may have to adjust people's effort. These are just some examples. You don't have to worry about it with this grant, but you need to get used to kind of understanding how much is being charged to your grant and tracking that against the appropriate categories. And then, yeah, that would be it. I mean, I just don't be afraid to reach out and surround yourself with the right support folks. The other thing that I would always caution you all to do is if you're needing something that's a little bit outside of what might be the norm for typical research expenses, like I said, the particular technical requirements of an instrument that may require you to have a high-end instrument versus kind of a standard piece of equipment, you document those things. Write a justification to yourself, just so that if anybody ever picks those out, because those are the kind of expenses that they look for. An auditor comes in and says, okay, let me look for weird stuff that's on your grant. And if you can't explain it, then somebody's not going to be happy with you. So, but
Tim, isn't it okay though to supplement the cost of something really expensive like a microscope? Just to say,
yeah,
we'll chip in, but we're not buying the whole thing with the funds.
Yeah, it is. And what I don't know, different institutional policies. So let's just say still a $25,000 piece of equipment, and you're going to kick in 5 from your training award. It'll still show up on your financials for your training award as equipment. And technically, you know, your budget doesn't have an equipment line item. It has a research supplies line item. So we would just want to make sure that if that's the plan, that we make sure that we've run it by folks and gotten somebody to say, yeah, that's okay.
And historically, there haven't been any serious issues, right?
Yeah, no. You know, really kind of the things that we struggle with is, you know, for these awards, the biggest thing that I struggle with personally is when you guys leave money on the table, because I hate to see that. Because sometimes I get higher ups breathing down my neck saying, how come we're not spending all these grant dollars, you know, and when they get sent back to NIH. But historically, the problems that we deal with are the ones that I pointed out. Stipend payments in the wrong job code, tuition charged to the wrong expense account, things like that. Very little issues in the way of unallowable type expenses that we've had to address.
See, guys, how rare it is to be told to go and spend money.
Yeah, you can. How do I want to say that? Sometimes you can't win. Spend it all, but don't spend $1 too much. That's hard to do. Mujib, was there anything specific that you wanted to say? You're on mute. You're on mute.
I would really recommend looking at your financial at least once a month on a detailed level transaction, because that will give you an idea of what is happening. And if something that need to be fixed, you can fix it. You can try to fix it as soon as possible versus, you know, if you look at your grant down the lane, like 6 months, and you come to find out there are things that need to be fixed, that would be my only recommendation.
Okay, good point. It's not uncommon for people to charge things by accident to your account. You know, oftentimes in the procurement system, you just got to enter a speed type, and so, you know, human error, and somebody types in, misses one number, and an expense hits your account. And so, you know, checking that. You know, Mujib is correct. Frequently looking at a financial statement, and your support folks should be able to provide you something is important. And you know, I usually tell people, I wouldn't get too bent out of shape about doing it every month over the first couple of months of your award, but you definitely don't want to start looking at your financials for the first time in month 10. You need to be looking at your progress regularly throughout the course of this 12-month appointment. Okay, we've probably taken
another question.
Oh, okay.
Do we need, they're asking if they need to report the full grant amount or just the stipend as income?
Ooh, I don't know the answer to that. First time I've been asked that. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I'm happy to find that out. If it's treated like a benefit, so to speak, and the university is going to give you some kind of a 1099 related to this as a work-related benefit. The only thing that I can think of in your grant that would apply to that would be tuition dollars.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say if you like, you can check with employee services, or if you are given, like Tim said, you know, your W-2 or 1099, that would be reflective of whatever the status of that grant is. But if you're not given any of that, you're good.
Any more questions in there, Lisa?
Yes. If they are added as a CU employee, do we work with CCTSI regarding financials, or do we work with the Department of the Research that we're in? So this is
work with the department that you're in up at CSU, because all of your expenses are on their finance.
CU, and she's coming in as a CCTSI because she's at Denver Health. Right.
Okay. Yeah, we have 2 of you like that. Somebody from Children's and somebody from Denver Health. Okay. All right. Yeah, work with your financials will be on the university. So whoever, let's see, you're under the CCTSI, right? We're holding your appointment for these. So, yep, Mujib and I will support you. Anything else?
Anyone have any questions? You don't have to use the chat. You can actually ask Tim directly yourself.
I have a quick question about just the tuition piece. So given that a lot of us or most of us should already be registered for classes right now for the next semester, how does that work? Do we just get a tuition bill and then say, hey, charge the tuition expense? Like, how does that, I guess
so
just logistically, I don't know how that works.
Right. So yeah, there is a process. So you'll get a tuition bill, and then Mujib and I, since you're one of the ones that has a CCTSI appointment, Mujib and I will work with you to process the appropriate paperwork so that your tuition account can be settled to your training account. We provide the speed type, but there's a specific process, and it's not totally intuitive.
Okay, great. Thank you.
This might be more for Lisa and Galit, but I'm like not going to be currently registered as a student because I'm taking a leave of absence from the MD program. So how do I register for the classes that I want to take? I'll be like non-degree seeking.
I don't know the answer to that.
Leave of absence from your medical school.
Yeah, she has to register. You would be registering as a non-degree student. Okay. And so we can send you the link in terms of how to.
Yeah, about it. There is a procedure to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and you actually want to start it early, Lauren. I think you probably spoke to your colleague in terms of she had problems last year with it. It took her a while. So hopefully she gave you some tips, but she did have to, going as a non-degree student does take a while. You have to go, you have to apply, and they do put you through some hoops.
Cool.
Sorry, but they're doable, but it's great that you're asking this and thinking about this ahead of time because they're starting to register for fall courses already.
Okay. Yeah, I might be in the system already because I'm in a graduate certificate program, but
okay. You could be then.
Oh, then you are. If you're active under a certificate program, you're an active student. Cool. Yeah, you can just go ahead and register.
Awesome. Thanks.
So Lily, how would she know if she's ready to go? Like in terms of that, it'll just allow her to register. I myself don't know those.
Yeah, go to your student portal and. I was just going to say, go to your student portal, fall semester registration opened up. So if you can register, then it's fine. If not, let me know.
We have taken up far more than the 15 or 20 minutes that you wanted us to take, Lisa. So
no, we're good because the group from Pitt canceled on us, so we had more time, and this is actually really important. And I just don't think that we ever really spend time on talking about grant management and the ins and outs of this. So I appreciate it.
Great. Allie, I just got an email from Olivia Castillo that she has successfully put you into job code 3204.
All right.
Okay, so if you guys don't have any more questions, Mujib and I will get off this call.
Okay. Any more questions, guys? Going once, going twice?
Thanks, Tim.
Good luck, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks.